So here I stand once again from the scenic view in West Vancouver, British Columbia. It's my last day here. I've been on about almost 2 week vacation here with my family, and I thought I'd make a video out here. There's this idea that I want to share. You know, I've been visiting a lot of my father's old friends, and so I've observed or been able to observe the habits of other people in a more objective way than I usually get the chance when I'm just at my home. And I want to talk specifically about our modern day addictions. Now, the addictions I want to speak of are the inherited ones in our modern culture in particular. There's a main three that I've really noticed for a long time, because it's pretty obvious, but that's been reiterated in the last week and a half or so. Now I'll name the three. Now the first one is pretty obvious, and that's alcohol. Now the second two are less obvious and oftentimes aren't even thought of as drugs necessarily, and those two are sugar and television. Now, let me start with alcohol. What's prompting me to talk about this video is that, or to talk about in this video, is that I had a new experience last time for the first time in my life. It may be surprising to hear that as a 20-year-old, I got drunk for the first time. Now, I've never been one to just do things because a lot of people are doing it, That's always been very off-putting to me, like seeing a lot of people do something just because everyone is doing it. It's like uncomfortable. It makes me feel like those people are more like just leaves in the wind rather than stable individuals who can stand and make decisions of themselves. And so it was a very spontaneous thing. I was never planning on it. I never really even thought much about the day I would ever drink for the first time. I didn't really care if it ever happened. But my older sister is here, and we live many miles away. She lives in Georgia. I live in Massachusetts. So she's 24. And so naturally, that influence just kind of brought about the situation in which I took about 3.5 shots. And my experience wasn't particularly exciting. I did enjoy it, but not to the point where it's like I'm looking forward to the next time it happens, or even really wanting to make that happen anytime soon. I'm going to turn the camera around again, get a view of this beautiful scenery. But it's like, before it happened, I've always been very reluctant to, because of how obviously toxic alcohol is. Like smelling a shot before I even took it, it's like, I don't want to do this right now. This smells like something I ought to put in my car, not my body. So, nonetheless, I did it anyway, and mostly what I have to speak about is not even my personal experience, because a lot of what I've observed in other people is that they use it as a social lubricant. Now, I wasn't really in a social setting. I was just with my two sisters. Now, I could definitely imagine myself in a situation where I could have a lot of fun just goofing off and being completely not serious about everything with my good friends if I were to be with them in that sort of state. But then again, it's not really hard for me to be like that when I'm not intoxicated. So, I guess since my experience is so limited, that's all I really have to say about that particular addiction. Moving on to the next one, which is television. Now, this is by far, I think, the most pervasive in our culture since the advent of the television, however many years ago, probably what, like 60, 50, 60, maybe somewhere around there years ago. Now, I'm just living with my grandfather, who is definitely getting up there in terms of age. Like, his two main addictions are these two that I've talked about so far: alcohol and television. Man, he watches more TV than any other human being I've probably observed. And I'm not saying that these are inherently bad things I'm talking about here just because I'm calling them addictions, you know. Um, my television watching is relatively infrequent. The most I ever watch is maybe a 20-minute show on Netflix with a meal, and I do think it's useful, and it serves me in that way, just to sort of come off my daily work routine and indulge in something frivolous by watching a funny TV show, you know, while I'm eating, resting up, and recharging my batteries. But obviously we'll talk about how these all can be abused at the end. Let's move into the last one, and I think by far the most overlooked, which is sugar. I think this is the most fucked up one, while the former two can maybe be said to have a healthy use for them. Sugar, in the way we use it today, like I'm talking about all the fake stuff that is in so much of the stuff in your average grocery store today, that it is really almost criminal what the sugar industry is doing. We have fallen victim to our own capitalistic habits. You know, the sugar company and the food industry at large, and actually even extends into things like the pharmaceutical industry and the health industry, because they're all part of the money-making modern world. But like we have, or the sugar company and all these other money-making outlets have taken advantage of the fact that humans are so easily addicted to these synthetic sugars that we put in so much stuff. And it's like we serve this shit to our children on their first birthdays and every, not only year on that particular day, but it's pretty much part of most individuals' weekly life, if not daily. I'm talking about like the purely celebratory food items like cookies, cakes, shit like that. And I live in America, which is like really like an epidemic of all this shit. Some people like have this with this sort of shit, this sort of bad fake sugar with every meal. And me in particular, since I've been on vacation here, it's been particularly bad because of how much I've been exposed to this shitty food being around someone who is not as health conscious as me. Like these things like cookies and macaroons and sugary drinks, which I actually don't really even indulge in at all, even when it's around me. Things like cookies and ice cream are something that have recently been getting a hold of me. Not a hold of me. I've been getting a hold of it. For some people, it's the other way around. But when I'm back at home in my daily routine, these sort of things are barely a part of my life. And I intend on keeping it that way. And so in conclusion, I have to ask, why do we use these things? How do they serve us? I don't want to go so far to say as they're all bullshit, we should not have them, because alcohol has a deep, deep history in human culture. And maybe a ritualistic use at social gatherings is not such a bad thing every once in a while. I think when it turns into a bad thing, alcohol in particular, it's like when you feel you need that in order to socialize. When I think you want to be able to have fun and sort of come off your daily routine in a more natural way without having to, seek out an external substance to help get you there. And that goes for TV too. Like, sure, it can be healthy. Watch a show every once in a while to lift your spirits, or there's a ton of good stuff on Netflix as far as like learning stuff about our world. There are a lot of informational, inspirational documentaries and movies. Sugar is the main one I can't even justify its existence, so I won't even try. But in conclusion, I think we just got to really maybe just even take a step back and question our usage of these things and not become victims of inheritance. It's kind of crazy to me how many people just do things because it's there and other people do them, so they think that it's good for them or okay. Sure, you can say, oh, many people drink. It's okay for me to drink once a week, on the weekends, and okay, sure, it is. But to say that's physiologically healthy for you, I mean, that's just wrong. You're poisoning yourself. Is there anything wrong with poisoning yourself once a week? I mean, if you're okay with poisoning yourself and you like the way it makes you feel, I guess not. But too often we see these things go too far. And all three of these can literally destroy lives. So, I suppose I've really gotten to everything I said. I've been talking for almost 15 minutes here. So, with that being said, I say goodbye to Canada. It's really beautiful out here. The Northwestern American tribal art is actually really interesting. That has nothing to do with what I've been talking about. But you should look at it. Just Google search. I do like coming out here. For sure. Anyhow, I shall talk another time.